Omoyele Sowore, welcome to my little podcast, Kent Academic Exchange. You are not a visitor to Kent in any way to mention. If I remember very well, you more or less kicked off your campaign at Kent at one of our events, the seminar we had on tracing stolen funds. And then, of course, things took a life of their own. You are with us now on this show. Before I ask for your views on a number of issues, I think I do need to introduce you. You are a Nigerian human rights activist, a pro-democracy campaigner. You are a former presidential campaigner, and in fact, you are a presidential campaigner as we speak. That's in fact why we are very interested in your views and in your candidacy. Actually, you are the founder of perhaps Africa's most known investigative journalism net platform, known as Sahara Reporters. And interestingly, you were born after my very young self, and that brings us to my first question. How did you hit upon this wonderful idea?
Feeling.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how did you hit upon this wonderful idea of serving Nigeria at its highest possible capacity? I remember meeting you perhaps for the first time when you were at the head of a massive rally in the University of Lagos in the early mid-90s, mid to late 90s, 92, 93, I think. I was a first-year PhD student on campus then, and I saw this younger fellow commanding this massive crowd of over 1,000 students, and I thought to myself, how did he get himself into this trouble of having to address this massive crowd? Now you are doing it again. You are addressing Nigeria. What brought you here? And tell us a little bit about yourself. What's something about you which is not common knowledge that we may need to know? I want to know what's making Omoyele Sowore tick.
Well, thank you very much for bringing me on your podcast. I was shaped by experience, experiences in repression, experiences in environmental pollution, experiences in inequality and poverty. And what I realized very early in life that these things would not go away without a fight. I quickly averted myself to that part in life that you can describe as very difficult, torturous, and brutish. So I arrived at the University of Lagos in 1989 as a freshman, and I came with a baggage of someone who had experienced police brutality at the age of 10, but never really met with anyone who could just explain to me why Nigeria had to be like that. Because everybody was afraid of the police, everybody was afraid of government where I grew up. But when I met the likes of Femi Falana, when he came to our campus one year when I was a freshman, and broke it down to a large extent to us, I changed my direction in life completely. And I moved on from there to do a lot of academics, but also do a lot of social justice work on campus, trying to help students fight for their rights, get the right welfare facilities, I fought for mattresses, fought for ceiling fans in rooms in Erica. Even though the authorities had massive warehouse of ceiling fans for students, they didn't release them. They claimed that the rooms were too small to accommodate ceiling fans. So I one day went to a lot of students when I was welfare secretary of America, liberated the ceiling fans, and eventually were forced to install them. Nets that were not working, mosquito nets, were installed. We fumigated the hall. And when I came back from purchasing the fumigation chemicals, the chairman of the hall then was welfare secretary, was shocked when I came back and remitted change. I said, "This is how much I bought it. There's a lot more money left." I gave it to him. He said, "Are you crazy? Why would you return money? It's not your money, it's students' money." I said, "No, this is the reminder of the money."
And by the mid-90s, you were already addressing even more challenging things. Because I remember again, our paths crossed when we were both in the CLO building, at least in various capacities.
Yeah, I was just building,
yeah,
and I know.
Oh, yes, okay, you could go on. Because what really interesting was that there was a time we all ran away from the CLO building because SSS was there.
And invaded the place.
And you were in the CLO building giving interviews to CNN. And I was wondering, this guy, does he have any fear in him at all? Anyway, please go on.
So, but what was our challenge in IT? It was changing Nigeria from military rule to civilian rule. And we just went to work. So we did a lot of work among students. I became the president of the University of Lagos Student Union, 1992. And we immediately had this Babangida must go rally. No, it was Babangida must go rally before I became president. Then we were expelled. Mayegun was now president and University of Lagos Student Union president. So we were expelled, and we went to court. The judges weren't willing to even undertake any anti-government lawsuits. And when I became president of the Student Union later in 2022, when we came back from expulsion, we went to work for democracy, ensuring that the military was forced out of power. And then they had election in 1993, and all hell broke loose.
Yeah, that much I remember.
Yeah, so, and again in 1994, I was expelled from the university. And they closed the university for many years. I was attacked. At the point I was injected with some non-chemical substance. By the time I left Nigeria in 1999, I've been detained 8 different times. Expelled twice from the university. I suffered broken head, broken bones. I was tortured. There's nothing. I mean, if you were reading this story now, it would sound like we made it up.
No, I mean, for those who are younger than us, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
But until they now saw that the same thing repeated itself against me in 2019, then people start to ask, who's this guy? You know, because a lot of people, especially people we call children of democracy who were born in 1999, did not really understand the struggle against
what we had to go through. Yes, in our own small way, what we had to go through against the military of an African state.
It was difficult to explain to them that somebody came to your campus and broke down all the doors on campus, physically dragged out the student, assaulted girls, both physically, sexually. They don't believe it because...
It's interesting you mentioned Mayegun. I remember at the 5 million man march, in Yaba, Lagos, which we did to counter the 3 million march of
I think they had a 1 million man march.
1 million march, and we promised to have a
5 million man march.
Yes.
Which was something I proposed at the UAD program.
Exactly. I was then the coordinating attorney of UAD, United Action for Democracy. I was under Olisa and CLO. Yeah, I remember after that, can I just say this? After that march, we all had to escape into various directions. And in the evening, I met Mayegun at an event at the German Cultural Center. This time we had now appeared like normal people with glasses in our hands.
Went to take a shower
and I asked him, I said, so what's going to happen next? Mayegun said, we're going to go underground. And I said, go underground how?
He was right.
That was when I knew I was dealing with different type of people. Yeah, please go on. Yeah,
it's true. I probably was one of the first few people that didn't go very much underground. But I remember after that, go underground. I think this was around 1997, 1998.
Yes, late 90s.
And I remember having a meeting somewhere in Ujuelegba, in a room owned by one Zikirulai, who was an agitator for mint workers in those days.
Are you sure that's not the building we took off from this 5 million man march? That was the building where the NLC had an office on the ground.
The NLC building is different, but across Ujuelegba, we call the area 42nd Avenue.
Okay.
At night is the red light district, so daytime, yeah, you know the place. So we would, so we had we're having a final meeting to say, look, everybody got to go underground at this point. Agbakoba had been arrested. Everybody, Mayegun, everybody arrested.
Was arrested by my side because we marched together from our side. You guys were coming from Yaba side. Yeah.
You're right.
We were coming from Ujuelegba.
It sustained a black eye massive that became an iconic photo of
him.
the democracy struggle.
Yeah, I'm sure you can Google it.
Agbakoba has smuggled a note out of detention saying that they are looking for me, to the point that they said if he could produce me, they will release him. I was the one causing all the trouble. And at this point, I didn't even have a place that I was living at permanently. I was just moving from place to place. It didn't make sense to even rent a house. But even if that was the case, I couldn't afford one. So, and then we're there waiting for the final meeting. We're sitting there, and then somebody came from outside and said, have we listened to BBC? And we said, no. So we turned on the BBC and said, General Abacha had died.
Yeah.
That was our last meeting on that day. And we just went on the street, and everybody everywhere went to SAC. So that place wasn't far from the police area commands on Western Avenue near the stadium. And we saw policemen flinging their hats out of the command. Yeah. It was unbelievable. Soldiers hugging civilians. So it turns out that everybody had been tired of the regime.
Even in the north, I was in the north at that time. I was in the Nigerian law school for my final bar preparation. And in the north, there was rejoicing. People were rejoicing because Abacha's era is again you can't describe it to the young generation. That everybody had to wear a badge that showed that you supported it before you could enter a government building, that all taxis had to have a sticker on their windscreen. That was the level of oppression we were going through.
It was
unbelievable. So Omoyele, now you are going for something more serious, and I wish you all the best of luck in this. Nigeria's perhaps most serious problem now is its economic circumstance. What would be your approach in leading Nigeria in terms of improving the economy, given the high debt to revenue levels that we have now? Huge debt, little revenue. How do you get us out of this?
Well, it turns out that a lot of major Nigeria problems are interlinked and interwoven. You just can't wake up one day and wish Nigeria prosperity without fixing electricity, deliberately. There has to be an emergency intervention without fixing security. But you can't fix security without also fixing electricity, because the nature of Nigeria's insecurity is just beyond physical insecurity. It has to do with, first and foremost, inequality, poverty, and economic instability. And look at the macroeconomic outlook of Nigeria, which has to do with mostly policy. Nobody's in charge.
The government keeps borrowing and borrowing and borrowing.
And this is going to be paid back. They borrowed Nigeria back into back to the Stone Age.
Definitely back to the pre-Obasanjo era, when
well, it's worse now, because when Obasanjo came, debt portfolio wasn't as huge as it is now.
Certainly not.
Right now, we're borrowing to eat. Before then, they were borrowing to.
So how do we get out of this hole? Someone needs to take us out of this hole.
That's what I'm saying. You have to. If anybody doing this has to tackle a range of things at the same time, because you can't say, "Oh, we'll stop borrowing when you have no revenue." but you can't boost your revenue base if you don't tackle security, because part of the revenue challenges they're having has something to do with not Boko Haram and bandits alone. No, that's a scary one. But there's also like some economic issues. Pipelines are being busted in Niger Delta region, and people are taking crude and refining it in their little local refineries. And that's depriving Nigeria of a huge amount of revenue. Otherwise, maybe right now that Ukraine and Russia are both at war, would have been making more money to take care of some of the shortfalls. Yeah. But the barrels of oil being exported is practically taking care of barrels of, their so-called subsidy of products, petroleum products. But there's no subsidy, it's just corruption of the biggest order. So you have to stop the bleeding first, but you have to also intervene in all these areas. And there are some practical steps that could be taken internationally where you halt repayment of debts. You act for
that's bound to lead you into trouble from the creditors. There will be a lot of sanctions and all that.
Yeah, it might in some ways, but if they see that the leadership is credible and they don't want a collapse of an economy of 200 million people, it will cost more for Nigeria to be bankrupt than for a moratorium to be placed on its repayments. That much I know, and it's nothing new. Europeans did. Greece did it, and they were able to recover from the situation.
Would you be looking at?
I'm just saying that all these options are going to be on the table.
Diversification of the economy. Diversification.
I personally have reservation about even the legitimacy of some of these loans and their interest rates. I don't think these guys on this other end of the table even know how to read the fine print of loans that they're taking. Definitely not Buhari.
So we have a lot of odious loans that don't pass the smell test.
When you have loans that practically mortgages or your country
irregularly obtained.
They are more than odious. They're more than odious. And I'm not sure that anybody is transparently looking at the terms and conditions attached to these laws. I don't think so.
Thank you for that. But one thing that also jumps at me is this thing you said that our problems are linked, and that makes sense. You can't solve one without
absolutely
throwing the other.
You can't solve the problem of inequality.
How about insecurity? Insecurity, what's your way out of that? We are living in a terrible period. Trains cannot move freely.
The immediate is to look at how to procure equipment, train people, restore leadership in the security agencies, let them share intelligence, make them obtain intelligence a lot, provide training, motivation, pay them better immediately. But in the long term, you must provide jobs and social security safeness for your citizens, for you to ensure that they don't take to crime.
One of your, rivals, I should say, Bola Tinubu, has said that his own way out of the security quagmire we found ourselves is to literally employ 300,000, 500,000 more people, that will be jobs, that will reduce, what do you call it, the unemployment, and you put them in jobs. Is it that simple?
It's not, he's confused, I'm sure, they don't know what they're saying. The most effective armies in the world today are not largely in numbers. It's an army that is handled with smartness. It is about your ability to use technology to fight. So you can imagine the job of what a drone can do would require about 1,000 soldiers to do.
This is one thing people will forget, that technology can make us, become 5 times better than our actual selves. There's a drone you can put above a city, and it records everything happening in the open for 24 hours. So you can literally watch people backwards. They've killed someone in this house. Here is their car leaving. This is where they parked the car. This is 5 men that left the building. All that is available for us now. Anyway, please go on.
So in our own case, You can put drones in the air. You can, drones, armed drones, unarmed drones, one for gathering intelligence tracking, and the armed drones can come in. Soldiers may not be able to get those terrains, but the drones can get to them. And they're cheaper, easier to remotely control and use. So the same thing even applies to the bandits enhancement. Drones can track all these people who are involved, who we call herdsmen in this part of the world, to make sure that we know where they're going, what they're carrying. You can put a drone on them that has night recording abilities, the ones that can figure out heat and know where people are located, they're carrying weapons. It will show,
So I suppose you will also carry on with other things that are ongoing, like making sure we are all traceable by electronic, by ID cards.
What I found out when I arrived in Nigeria in 2018, 2017, 2018, is that Nigeria was engaging in data abuse. They're abusing their citizens, in obtaining data, they're abusing their citizens' rights to privacy. Because every Tom, Dick, and Harry, we're collecting data. Banks are collecting data in the name of what they call BVN, but they take your biometrics. The driver's license office takes your biometrics. INEC, which is the Electoral Commission, takes your biometrics and gives you an ID card.
A passport.
Passport, immigration takes your. The phone companies, who naturally should have no right to take your biometrics, are also collecting your biometrics. That's number 5, right? Some private individuals are collecting, biometrics, and sometimes even collecting your contact information from your phone.
Yes.
So loan sharks, all people out there collecting, whereas they should have no chance in the world or have access.
We do need this. We do need a concrete biometric database, don't we?
We also need to harmonize it so that you can secure the data. I cannot call someone in the UK who asks about your information. It's forbidden. That's like a crime, to call a hospital and say, I want to know if, Dr. Benga Duton is in your hospital.
Oh, I'll tell you an interesting one. A parent came on campus. Of course, I'm an academic. A parent came on campus and wanted to find out where his son lives on campus. And the security guard took him to his, that guy was in trouble. Because the son said, who told you I want my father to know where I am? Exactly. We had to change our laws to make such things impossible on campus.
It's a question of privacy. It's a process of data curation and protection. So if I want to apply for anything in the US, I have one data point only, most likely, to get anything done. And that's the social security number, which is what we call NIN here. It's NIN. If I want to go for a driver's license, so it's okay, bring your NIN and another form of ID. That might be INEC ID. But INEC is the phone company, I don't think is allowed to collect your fingerprints. It's the government that does that. And then they have a general portal they log on into and find your information and make sure that it's accurate. And then you get whatever you want. But here, everybody's got. There was a time at the airport, KLM was collecting fingerprints, and everybody was happy to give them their fingerprints until I got there and said, you have no right to come into a country with a biometric machine. I mean, collecting. He said, if you're not going to fly, I said, that's fine by me. Yeah. But it's wrong. It's just like Airpeace taking a biometric machine to Schiphol Airport and say they're collecting.
You never know what your rivals internationally are doing with this kind of information.
Exactly.
You never can tell.
Yeah. So I'm just talking about data, that there's a lot of data, probably more than enough data out there. What is not happening is that they are not being harmonized. They are not being curated. They're not being coordinated in such a way that it's just one single data point. And if you use data that's available, either biometric or non-biometric data that's available, you will have an idea of how many citizens are in Nigeria. You can guess that an average Nigerian carries 2 phones or 3 because of instability of from this network.
Yeah.
But if you have 100 million phones, internet connected phones in Nigeria, smartphones, it makes sense to say that there are 50 million phone users in Nigeria, because an average Nigerian carries. So, and when he talks about data, it's about statistics. You use certain parameters to judge what you think is, what you think is, the number. So
Okay,
whatever is,
you
can use that to judge consumption. You can use it to judge demography. You can use it to figure out how many people are in need of social security, how many kids are in school. So that's the office of the Federal Office of Statistics, or the Statistician General of the country. But this thing, people don't even understand it. That's why sometimes it's difficult for them to understand, people like us, the level at which we are speaking to these issues. Like, where's this guy coming from? It's not like a madman when you break things down.
We're talking security, and you're talking drones, you're talking privacy laws. These are not the things that the average politician would even have their heads around. Yeah, but those are good. How do you deal with a terrible police force, if I may be permitted to speak like that, or what do I call it, a criminal justice system that is not fit for purpose?
I go in and out of the system on a regular basis. I get arrested frequently, and I can tell you that Nigerian police force.
And you got shot at. Didn't you get shot at recently? You got shot at.
They shot me with a riot gun. They broke my nose. I get arrested frequently. And I tell you, the Nigerian police force is nothing short of an organized crime syndicate. Nothing more. And everybody is
really horrible.
Yeah. So, and it's set up in such a way that it then has rogue units, which are set up at ad hoc units to do the bidding of either the rich or the connected or politicians or their bosses. So it doesn't end. If I get to become president of Nigeria, I know how to tear the police apart. It's just a very simple thing, because I know how they operate.
I know your position on NSAS, for instance. I agree that a lot of excesses have happened there, but you will always need special units in any respectable police force. You will always need crack units.
You can have crack units. Your crack units are different from rogue units.
Very true.
Yes. So these are rogue units, and not crack units.
There's extrajudicial killing going on.
They're just operating lawlessly, and there's no command and control in such a way that you can say, okay, this particular crack unit is responsible for this. There are reviews of their activities. If you go to the UK or the US, each of the crack units, whenever they're back on operations, there's special reviews.
Yeah.
What did you do wrong? What did you do right? What is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
And once anybody has shot a gun, the person is immediately on a sort of administrative leave until the situation is forensically looked at.
Yeah. Where did you shoot the gun? Who did you shoot it at? How many bullets do you have? Here, police officers have bullets issued to them, and they have their own bullets too.
You imagine that? They have their own bullets too.
They buy their uniforms, they buy boots, so they take out guns and rent it out to criminals.
If they can buy their own uniform, that means they can have extra uniforms that they give out to rogue elements in society.
You don't have to. Anybody can pretty much buy a uniform. They sell uniforms in front of police commands the same way they sell water. So
which is why we're having these problems we're having internationally in terms of the Boko Haram linking up with the ISIS and all that. That brings me to the question: what are your views on foreign policy? What's your foreign policy view for a country like Nigeria? I always have a special place in my heart for those countries that helped us in our pro-democracy days. And I have no problems mentioning them here, like Canada, I used personally to go on behalf of the UAD to the Danish embassy. There are good forces like that. But then we also have states that I have personal reservations about, such as the United States of America, such as the United Kingdom, that I think that these are states that pretend to be friends, but they really have to justify themselves. And we do have to be quite smart in our foreign policy posture. What's your foreign policy outlook?
You know, I just want to briefly describe what our foreign policy situation has been. You know, it used to be, you know, the big brother African country who helps with everything relating to African countries. But we don't ask them questions. We don't ask questions about human rights. We just give whatever they want or whatever we can support with. We used to pay salaries, we give electricity to our neighbors. That has to change. And what needs to change with is the lethargy and subservient nature of our foreign policy to the main corporates, some of them you've mentioned, and the issue of reciprocity as well. Like, you can't just keep having foreign policies in which your citizens are maltreated and you don't do anything about it.
Are you talking of any particular African countries that's giving you worries now?
Yes, I talk about South Africa. I was in South Africa in 2018, 2019 when I was campaigning. I went to a radio station, and when I told them that, you know, this rubbish will no longer be acceptable, the way they treat Nigerians, they switched off the show. Wow. And they invited me from, yes, SABC, who was supposed to interview me for an hour, because they said, you know, this is an abomination around here to make Nigeria look like our big brother. We don't accept that. And this is because of the way Nigeria has handled itself internally. And I must say this, you cannot have a respectable foreign policy without having, you know, your own local affairs.
Getting yourself straight, getting yourself serious.
You have to be serious at home before people that take you serious outside. That is number one rule of thumb for foreign policy, I think.
Very true. If you have a respectable domestic system, it has spillover effects for investments, for being taken serious. But I guess it doesn't stop the problem we have with our colonial heritage, our colonial masters. Countries like the UK, countries like the US, who, for instance, believe that because Ukraine and Russia are having a problem right now, Nigeria must take a stance continuously in the interest of the West. How do we handle the West? How do we handle the Middle East? Because whether we like it or not, we are a serious African state. We are a leading African state. It shows you the standard of Africa. But we are a serious African state. How do we handle ourselves publicly?
It's the reason I've said it many times that Nigeria is a letdown. You know, to the point that if we had been serious, we would have been taken seriously. And I've had this conversation several times. Also on the continent of Africa, we are so weak that others have to come out and regulate Africa for us. Nigeria doesn't have a human rights policy for African countries. It didn't draft one, it didn't push for one. The OAU, as it was, and later AU, is a tea party for all these local despots. You know, you cannot hear Nigeria saying, "No, you know, we don't like the way you shot protesters in your country, and we don't appreciate you rigging your election," because we rig elections too at home. But there's a lot that can be done.
By example.
Yeah. So there's a lot that can be done to say to the US, and I want to address to us, say, look, we have a policy on liberation of Palestinians from Israel. You have a policy on Ukraine and
Russia.
If you don't take our own, you can't force us to do your own.
Which is the very basis of diplomacy. Diplomacy is about reciprocity. You don't get anything from us without giving.
Yeah. But they know, and I'm sure you know this, they know, and this is why they have perpetually supported derelicts and mediocre people to run this African country, particularly Nigeria. Because it's not just, you know, our own diplomacy is not just UN-based diplomacy. There is also an economic diplomacy involved. We have a product in the international market that's very powerful. So, and you can use that to leverage the diplomacy too. If you decide that you're not selling your oil to the world, well, probably not anymore as such, until they listen to certain things, you will get it right. they will listen to you because now you're hurting their bottom line. Also, by now, Africa, Nigeria ought to be on the
the permanent
United Nations Security Committee.
Yeah,
Yes. But we couldn't have pushed for it.
Well, what we are being told is that we may have to share with another African state, say South Africa, together. I mean, that's just one of the theories that's been.
Why is France not sharing with
Britain?
With Britain, yeah, the neighbors.
My brother, if you put the population of the UK together and the population of France together, it's not even up to Nigeria's population.
Exactly. So why are they not sharing? Why are they not
sharing the seats?
Their own spot. It's again, it boils down to this neo-colonial attitude towards us. That you just look at us and say, look, yes, we gave you independence, but we just gave you the flag. We didn't give you.
Which is why we are looking forward to a change. Which is why we are all looking forward to a change. We're all looking forward to a possibility of a generational handover. I can't repeat enough how much I wish you the best of luck. One last question. How do you run for this office without the Nigerian factor, big M, which is money, given the kind of opponents you have with deep pockets?
It's also a function of how far people have gone down the drain, collecting money. I think that's increased the consciousness of most Nigerians, but the problem has not been solved. That people still rely on money to vote, money to even attend rallies. You must make some kind of promise or a set of promises. But they realize that people who give them money don't even campaign. Sometimes people just say things on their behalf because they know they don't have to say anything as long as you have money to bribe. But we are depending on the fact that the biggest currency that will take Nigeria out of the doldrum is idea. It's going to be ideas. It has to be fervent, ideas that are very clear about how to save the country, how to move Nigeria from poverty to prosperity, how to move it, from being a jungle to a place of justice, how to move it from a place of, respect for the people.
Would you permit me to differ a bit about one word you just used? And I know you've used it severally and you have a studied view on it, that Nigeria is a jungle, that there was the gentleman who is now in detention, who we used to call Nigeria a zoo. There's something the Nigerians and the Africans believe in, the prophetic word. Should we not run away from using these terms about our last and only place on earth that belongs to us? And if that place needs to be restructured, what are your views on how to restructure it so that we don't feel obliged to use this kind of terms? I don't like them personally.
I don't like them too, but I'm a realist. It's that realistically, if you live in the UK and you've been to a zoo before, probably animals there are probably better treated than Nigerians. Because I've been to zoos that have schools, where they teach the animals how to learn a few things. They have doctors, they have water to drink. Some of them are allowed to go on some kind of vacation where they don't have to come out to let them rest. They have periods that they get entertained, and so in some ways, honestly,
you don't even have to say much. I can see the contrast with Nigeria as a whole. Yeah.
So I don't, but look.
So do you believe in restructuring?
If your country is called a zoo, I do. It's just not the kind of obsolete kind of restructuring that the older generation of elders talk about. I believe that restructuring has to be holistic to the point that it understands that the world has moved on from 1963. It's way further than 1923. Some people want us to go and use the constitution of 1963. And I said to them, did the constitution recognize our mobile devices that we use today? Did they understand that people could go to school without leaving their houses that you and I can have a conversation on the Zoom streets where you don't leave your room, I don't leave mine, and we're conversing. 1963 did not take into consideration. Yeah, so you can't go back to the past and expect progress. But everybody is talking about restructuring. Nigeria is talking from a place of passion. Some people are just like intervening at their level of consciousness, strength, and courage. Otherwise, probably everybody will agree with me that we need a revolution, and that will have taken care of this
What
problem.
exactly do you mean by a revolution?
Oh, it's what the revolution is, like a mass uprising.
Yes, but to what end? To what was the end of the revolution?
Towards the end of completely changing everything that Nigeria is today from bad to good.
Towards the better.
Towards the best.
Towards the best. Thank you very much, Omoyele Sowore. Do take care of yourself. The last time I saw you and I met with you physically, you did not have that scar. Seems Nigeria has happened to you. And
Nigeria has happened to me since I was born.
That's a shame.
Just more scars every day.
But I have this sneaky suspicion that we will both be having a conversation like this in 20 years' time again. All white hair, maybe. And I strongly think things would have gotten better, but between you and I, we wouldn't have agreed on that things ever got better, because our dream for Africa, our dream for Nigeria would still not have been fulfilled.
Let me shock you. I don't know if things keep going this way, that I will last another 30 years.
No, don't say that. You break my heart when you say that. No, you will. I'm not totally religious.
I don't know.
I do pray you will.
Like everybody, and this is what Martin Luther King says, he wishes to live long, but this is a dangerous place, very dangerous place to live.
On that very sad note, I guess we have to stop this conversation on this. Thank you so much for appearing. And once again, Kent Academic Exchange, University of Kent, always open to you.
And I love it out there. One of my best speeches ever was made on your campus.
Oh yes, I remember. We have over nearly 200,000 views of that video.
Gathering views to today.
Yes.
In fact, I was going to ask you one last question. If I can get a high res of that complete video, I want to, and with permission.
Oh yeah, I can make you get that. We'll talk afterwards. I can.
Thank you.
Thanks, my brother.
Thank you so much.